G'day friends. Do you remember that catchy country-style song Mansion Over the Hilltop that was popular in the 1960s? Not all hymns and Christian songs have theology to match their tunes. I was thinking about that mansion over the hilltop this week, when Jesus says in the Authorized Version, "In my Father's house are many mansions," he isn't talking about an imposing white building with carved stone pillars on the front veranda. The word mansion is from the Latin mansio, meaning night quarters or station. The equivalent Greek word in John 14 verse 6 is monai, and it means the same. Jesus is talking about rooms where a soldier could drop his kit and unroll his sleeping bag on a stone bench for a few hours of sleep before setting off again, something like a room in a boarding house or a motel room. You could sing, "I've got a motel room just over the hilltop in that bright land where we never grow old." We have to avoid distorted views of the resurrection, and our passage helps us keep the picture straight. I was in a discussion and questioned the doctrine of the rapture. People piled on me to tell me that if I didn't believe it, I wasn't a true Christian and would be left behind. I said, "Do you understand what being a Christian is about? If I declare with my mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in my heart that God has raised him from the dead, I shall be saved. That's all I need." Of course, those two simple statements hold a fund of meaning. To declare that Jesus is Lord is to displace all earthly rulers. We cooperate with the established powers, but we don't belong to them. We belong to Jesus and ultimately do what he directs. He said, "Follow me," and we follow. And to believe that he died for me and was raised for me implies that he stood in the breach and held back from all who shelter behind him the full blast of God's wrath, even at the cost of his own life. Jesus is a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. His was no futile death ending with the grave. He died and rose victorious, and we who participate in his death will also share in the coming resurrection. So we come to the Sadducees in Luke chapter 20, making one last attempt to overturn Jesus. In some ways, the Sadducees are the fundamentalists of the time. The Pharisees accept the prophets and the writings. The Sadducees say, if it's not in the first 5 books of Moses, it isn't true. And they can't find the resurrection in there, so it doesn't exist. This life is all there is. The Pharisees believed in the resurrection and the final judgment when everything will be set right. The Sadducees rejected it. They tried to trap Jesus with a trick question. We find it in chapter 20, verse 28. "Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother." Under Jewish law, a wife wasn't really an individual in her own right. Though her marriage might be loving, she existed to ensure that the family name and property were maintained. The law of levirate marriage, levir is Latin for brother-in-law, provided that if a woman married a man who died before they had children, she married her brother-in-law to have a child by him. That child was counted as her original husband's and would inherit the dead man's property. But what if she's passed around between 7 brothers and doesn't have a child by any of them? The Sadducees imagine nothing more ridiculous than a resurrection where all those brothers argue about whose wife the woman is. Just notice something. The Pharisees and Jesus assume an earthly physical existence in the resurrection. The Sadducees say death is the end. No one thought of a spiritual heavenly existence. That was from Plato, not from Scripture. The Pharisees expected bodily resurrection on a renewed earth, with the Messiah on David's throne in Jerusalem and all the earth acknowledging his authority. As Job says, "For I know that my Redeemer lives, and that at the last he will stand upon the earth. And after my skin has been thus destroyed, then in my flesh I shall see God. Jesus never rejects that picture, but he rejects some common ideas of the coming age. The Bible says, and this is in Romans chapter 8, "For the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God." The world will be transformed and renewed on that day when it's finally liberated. Everything will be changed, made right, freed from bondage and rot. So the Sadducees go through this rigmarole trying to get Jesus to either agree with their scenario and look stupid, or to reject the idea of resurrection and alienate the Pharisees who supported him. Instead, Jesus makes the Sadducees look stupid. He listens to their entire tale and says, "Those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they can't die anymore because they're like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection." That is, their presuppositions are wrong. It's a typical gotcha question. If you can't be bothered to understand your opponent's position, don't bother trying to show them they're wrong. So Jesus tells these Sadducees, "You don't know what you're talking about." Have you heard the expression angel gear? It's not what you wear for the Christmas pageant. If you go quickly into a sharp downhill corner in a car with manual gears and miss the downshift, you'll be in angel gear, and it's not a nice place to be. It means there's nothing doing down below. You're in neutral. Jesus says we will be like the angels, which might mean that most of the fun will be missing from life in the age to come. After all, Jesus had just said those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Be careful though. The next sentence is, "Indeed, they cannot die anymore because they're like angels." His statement about angels is about the end of death, not the end of marriage. That is, Jesus makes two statements, one about the end of marriage and the other about the end of death. He doesn't say relationships or some kind of male-female distinction end. God created male and female. Why would that end? Why would God create us different, made for one another, then change his mind? If we don't die, though, procreation is no longer necessary, is it? And if time is no more, we'll have all the time we need to get to know everyone intimately. Here, after maybe 50 years, we're just getting to know another person really thoroughly. The pleasure of sex which binds couples together. I don't know what will happen to that. But surely God will give us pleasures we never imagined, pleasures bound up in a relationship with himself as well. We know what those Sadducees could never envisage. We've seen the risen Christ. We know he has changed and that he wasn't bound by time or space, that he could appear and disappear at will, yet he was still recognised, even if not at once. So we also know that on that great day, we will recognise and know those we loved. As Paul told the Corinthians, not all flesh is the same. There are heavenly bodies and earthly bodies, but the glory of the heavenly is of one kind, and the glory of the earthly is of another. There is one glory of the sun, and another glory of the moon, and another glory of the stars, for star differs from star in glory. So it is with the resurrection of the dead. What is sown is perishable, what is raised is imperishable. What is sown in dishonour is raised in glory. What is sown in weakness is raised in power. It has sown a natural body. It has raised a spiritual body. If there is a natural body, there is also a spiritual body. And he adds, "Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised imperishable, and we shall be changed." What wonders to anticipate. For those who die before the resurrection, there is safe lodging in God's house. Then on that great and glorious day of the general resurrection, the saints will meet Jesus in the air and escort him to his enthronement. Then God will rule through him over a perfected and purified heaven and earth. Those who fear God will find mercy. He will laugh the proud to scorn and scatter them in their innermost thoughts. The mighty will be dethroned and the humble will be exalted. The hungry will eat freely, the rich will go away empty. And returning to those bewildered, confounded Sadducees, what does Moses say? As Jesus reminded them, and the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. Here we see that resurrection has been part of God's promises from the very beginning. We can even expect to meet the patriarchs of the past. We can live in both anticipation and assurance of the resurrection on the day of Jesus' coming. We can look beyond struggles, beyond wars, famine, pestilence and plague. We can look beyond today's Sadducees who mock our hope. Just as the ancient Israelites longed for the day when the people walking in darkness would see that great light, so we can anticipate that day when the light of the world is in our midst forever, when the new Jerusalem is on earth and there is no need for sun or moon, for the glory of God gives it light and the lamp is the Lamb. But Jesus says this is the reality for those who are considered worthy for a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead. One sad thing about the church is the number of people in it who've done nothing to make a change in all the time they've been members. We all need to reflect prayerfully on this question, will I be found worthy? If you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. Those who declare that truth and believe those facts are those who follow all the way into the promised land and to the throne itself. Where do you stand with Jesus? Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I just want to remind you that subscribing is free. There's no charge involved. You get notified when another video is posted.